Lots of jostling for position in terms of policy positions. How likely is it? Do you think we're going to have a minority government given previous trends?
Yeah, thank you for covering that, because that's been something that I've been trying to add to the debate. Honestly, under MMP, to some extent, governments have just been making it up as they go along and figuring out what will work. So, coalition is only one possibility, but we've also seen over our kind of history of MMP different kind of innovative arrangements, I guess, under the John Key years that enhanced confidence and supply. We are kind of making it up as we go, and ruling in, ruling out, is all fine and good until it's either go with them in some kind of weird, funky, new, innovative arrangement, or go back to the polls. Yeah. And I think most people, if you look at kind of international examples, are going to not want to go back to the polls. You don't want to be the party who caused another election. Because they
create voter backlash, right?
It would be devastating, and it would be devastating for this country as well. The level of trust in politicians and voting and that, it would, people wouldn't want to waste another Saturday. They wouldn't.
No. Okay. There is a lot of jostling going on. One of them involving Winston Peters and New Zealand First, Jordan. So this week we've seen David Seymour rule him out, and then our ACT has taken out a billboard in the capital saying things, targeting Winston Peters and saying, don't get fooled again. What do you make of that sort of position?
Yeah, it's bizarre. In fact, my own staff in Wellington actually thought it was a New Zealand First poster. Has a picture of a sort of jovial, laughing Winston Peters with "Don't get fooled again." And of course, it is in the ACT world, don't get fooled by the guy that put Jacinda Ardern into power.
So is it not obvious enough?
Well, no, it's not until you see the. But for the average, for the average New Zealander, that's Winston saying "Don't get fooled again." Okay. I have some experience in this. In the 2011, for the Vote for Change campaign, we did huge billboards that said "Trust MMP?" with Mr. Peters holding the no sign. And all the feedback we got, is that people thought that it was advertising Mr. Peters.
Right. So that backfired on you.
I don't know who is doing ACT's billboards, but they need to be marched out.
Well, let's talk about New Zealand First. How is New Zealand First tracking in the polls?
Yeah, they're making a comeback in the polls. And I think one of the things to note, and one of the things I've been thinking about, is that these are the optimal conditions for populism. If you look at the international examples, some of the literature we've written in the election study, is that, there's this kind of inequality, but people concerned about inequality. There was a Herald poll that showed that, and then there's a lot of people saying New Zealand's on the wrong track. And that's just creating those perfect conditions for populism to thrive, and I think Winston Peters is quite happy to take up that mantle.
Yes, he is. And one of those polls was the Taxpayer Courier poll, but also there was another poll as well regarding ruling Winston in or out. National's not ruling Winston out at the moment. Does that create a problem in terms of coalition negotiations in the future?
I think Christopher Luxon has a very difficult decision to make. And we've seen on ruling out the Māori Party, he was probably a little bit late. He needs to either do this is what made John Key so powerful. He was comfortable in his own skin. He was willing and able to take risks. That last month's Taxpayer Union Courier poll had a hung parliament. This month, New Zealand First is there. Yes, it would be an ACT national government, but you need just 0.1.
That's right.
For ACT to slip or for New Zealand First to go up. 0.1. And on Thursday's poll, Winston Peters would have held the balance of power. Mr. Luxon would need both Seymour and confidence votes from Winston Peters.
Right. Does data tell us what National should do in that situation, or is it just a political decision?
Yeah, when we do look back to the election study, voters do prefer that they know the party they're voting for, who they would and wouldn't work with. That seems to be something that's quite clear over election days. People want to know when they're voting for National or Labour who's coming along with them, and for the minor parties who they'll work with. If you look back to 2017, actually the majority of Winston Peters voters, New Zealand First voters, wanted them to go with National, and that's one of the arguments that people have put forth.
Well, he's ruled.
That's X's line.
Okay, well, let's talk about some other data. And this is Labor's showing in the polls. they're dropping quite a bit, it seems, Lara. I mean, from what you're tracking.
Yeah, and again, like, I always look at the trend line in the polls, but that trend line has been a drop over time. Yeah, I mean, that's all we can really say about that. I mean, it's like watching this trend over these next few months. Again, as those people who don't really follow politics, the hoardings are up now, they're following it, they're getting more engaged, and I'm sure, you know, that's the thing to now really watch what happens to that trend line.
Yeah, so the trend line is down. It's a big policy launch for Labor on Sunday with their tax policy. How crucial is that for them? Because, as you've seen in your poll and other polls, they are dipping. Yeah,
I mean, it looks to be likely that there's going to be some sort of changes at the upper end of the income tax system, likely GST off fruit and veg.
Yeah. Is that enough?
I don't think so. I mean, but on the other hand, Grant Robinson is always known as pulling rabbits out, or inventing rabbits to pull out of the hat.
Yeah.
I mean, I can already detect a little bit of complacency on the centre right, whereas, you know, in 2005, this far out from the election, it looked like Don Brash was going to be Prime Minister.
Right.
And with, you know, interest-free student loans, and again, that rabbit's out of the hat.
Yeah.
Or it could well be like 2005 again, where Labor go very nasty on the National Party's leader. You know, politics is events.
We'll see if they do that.
And when you've got such a high proportion of New Zealanders deciding right at the last minute.
Good point. Yeah, so, Lara, just to wrap up, remind us again how much of the electorate makes it up on the day.
It's literally like a few percent. It's those few weeks. It's really this time period from about now, when people view the campaign as starting, and in that last week, it's normally not a lot of people. But I mean, it could be a weird election. It could be one.
You know the data, but Peter Dunn, with that worm, 3 days out from the election, went from a one-man band to bringing, what, eight
yeah, that's right.
no hopers into Parliament.
It does depend on the election as well, so it varies a lot over different elections. And we still have so much road to run, right?
And we do. And I'm going to cut off your road right now because we're out of time, but we've got a lot more road to run. Lara Greaves and Jordan Williams, thank you so much for your time today.